Imagine millions of people, teachers, pensioners, factory workers, losing their life savings overnight. For many, these weren't just numbers in a bank account. These were the savings meant for a child's education, a long-awaited retirement, or simply to put food on the table. The shock was immediate, but the pain would last for years. At its peak, the MMM scheme ensnared up to 40 million people, all chasing the promise of financial freedom in post-Soviet Russia. In a country reeling from the collapse of the Soviet Union, hope was in short supply, and MM offered a lifeline that seemed almost too good to be true. Instead, it became a national nightmare. The dream of a better life quickly turned into a collective trauma as families watched their futures evaporate in real time. The devastation was staggering, not just in numbers, but in shattered hopes. People who had trusted the system felt betrayed, and the sense of loss went far beyond money. People invested everything, inspired by neighbors flaunting new cars and TVs, convinced they'd found a shortcut to prosperity. The sight of ordinary people suddenly living luxuriously fueled a frenzy, making it seem like anyone could strike it rich overnight. MMM wasn't a backroom scam, it was everywhere, on TV, in stadiums, sponsoring national events. Its advertisements promised not just wealth, but a new beginning for millions desperate for change. Its logo was as familiar as any global brand, creating an illusion of legitimacy. The company's presence was so overwhelming that it became part of daily life, blurring the line between reality and fantasy. The company took in millions of dollars daily, with offices overflowing and warehouses rented just to store the cash. The sheer scale of the operation was unprecedented, and it seemed unstoppable. This was a phenomenon, not a secret. Everyone knew someone who had invested, and the excitement was contagious. People weren't just investing, they were swept up in a movement that felt too big to fail. The sense of community, of shared destiny, made it even harder to resist. But when the dust settled, all that remained were broken promises and ruined lives. The silence that followed was deafening as families struggled to pick up the pieces. The story of MMM is a warning. Hope, when manipulated, can lead to ruin. It's a lesson written in the tears and empty pockets of millions, and in Russia that hope was weaponized on a scale the world had never seen, leaving scars that would last for generations. So, what exactly is a pyramid scheme? You've probably heard the term tossed around, but let's break it down in simple terms. Imagine a structure with one person at the very top. This person recruits a group of people below them, let's say 10. Each of those 10 is then encouraged or pressured to recruit 10 more, and the process repeats, expanding rapidly. The catch? Each new recruit pays money up the chain to the person who brought them in, but there's no real product or valuable service being exchanged. The only real source of money is from the constant flow of new recruits, joining in and handing over their cash. The people who join early can make a lot of money, at least at first, but the system is fundamentally flawed. Eventually you simply run out of new people to recruit. It's a mathematical certainty. As the pyramid grows, most participants are left with nothing, losing their investments and sometimes even more. To avoid detection, pyramid schemes often try to look like real businesses. They use impressive-sounding jargon, flashy presentations, and sometimes even offer token products to seem legitimate. But if you look closely, the main activity is always about bringing in new recruits, not actually selling anything of real value. The key difference between a legal multi-level marketing company and a pyramid scheme is this. In a legitimate business, profits come from selling real products or services to actual customers. In a pyramid scheme, the focus is always on signing up new members, not on genuine sales. That's why pyramid schemes are illegal in most countries. They're designed to collapse, leaving the vast majority of participants broke and disappointed. At their core, pyramid schemes are a form of financial fraud, cleverly disguised as a golden opportunity for easy money. And when it comes to pyramid schemes, MMM was the biggest and most notorious of them all, a cautionary tale for millions. At the center of MMM was Sergey Mavrodi, a brilliant, eccentric mathematician who understood numbers and, more importantly, people. He was a man who saw opportunity where others saw only chaos, and he had a knack for reading the mood of a nation in turmoil. After the Soviet collapse, Russians were desperate for stability. The old certainties had vanished overnight, leaving millions searching for something, anything to believe in. Mavrodi, with his brother and Olga Melnikova, founded MMM in 1989, first as a trading cooperative. They started small, but Mavrodi's ambitions were anything but. But in 1994, he transformed it into a financial juggernaut, issuing shares that promised to double in value every month. The promise was irresistible in a country where inflation was rampant and savings were evaporating. These weren't real shares, just paper with Mavrodi's face. Yet to many, they represented hope and a chance at a better life. The process was simple. Hand over cash, get tickets, watch their value soar. No complicated contracts, no confusing jargon, just a straightforward exchange. Words spread like wildfire. Friends told friends, and the frenzy grew. Soon it seemed like everyone knew someone who had made a fortune overnight. Mavrodi styled himself as a people's hero, fighting corrupt banks and government. He positioned himself as the champion of the common man, railing against the system that had failed so many. He spoke directly to the masses, casting himself as a modern Robin Hood. His speeches were electrifying, filled with promises of justice and prosperity. In a country with no trust in institutions, his message resonated. People were tired of being let down by those in power. Millions believed he was their savior. For the first time in years, hope was in the air. The genius was in the simplicity. No paperwork, no stock market knowledge, just hope. Anyone could join, and everyone felt like they had a chance. The more people joined, the faster the scheme grew. It became a self-feeding frenzy, with crowds swelling by the day. Mavrodi's vision was audacious, and for a while it worked. For a brief, dazzling moment it seemed unstoppable, until inevitably it didn't. MMM's explosive growth was fueled by masterful advertising. The face of the campaign was Leonya Golubkov, an everyman whose life transformed thanks to MMM. The ads didn't talk finance, they showed dreams, fur coats, new apartments, trips abroad. The message was simple: you're not a gambler, you're a partner. These commercials ran constantly, making Leonya a national icon. MMM opened offices everywhere, with lines of people eager to buy in. The crowds created social proof: if everyone's doing it, it must be safe. Urgency and FOMO drove people to invest before the opportunity vanished. When critics spoke up, Mavrodi fought back, buying ads and sponsoring public events to appear as a benefactor. He painted MMM as the people's champion against a corrupt elite. This us versus them narrative built fierce loyalty. People didn't just invest, they joined a movement, and that made the fall even harder. Mavrodi's genius was psychological manipulation. He openly admitted MMM was a pyramid, claiming honesty as proof of trustworthiness. Early investors were paid handsomely, becoming walking advertisements for the scheme. Their success stories spread, convincing others to join. MMM tickets looked like real currency, complete with watermarks and Mavrodi's portrait, making the investment feel tangible. The brand was powerful. Holding a ticket felt like holding wealth. Mavrodi also created a common enemy: the government and banks. Every warning from officials became proof that MMM was a threat to the corrupt system. This turned investors into loyal followers, united against a supposed oppressor. The more the authorities attacked, the more people invested. Mavrodi wasn't just running a scam. He was leading a financial revolution, or so his followers believed. In reality, they were soldiers in a losing battle. For a brief moment, MMM made dreams come true. Some, like factory worker Dmitry, doubled their money and escaped poverty, but for every winner there were countless losers. Retirees like Elena invested everything only to watch it vanish. Families sold homes, borrowed from friends, convinced they'd strike it rich. When the scheme collapsed, they were left with nothing, and often crushing debt. The psychological toll was immense: shame, regret, broken relationships. Friends turned on each other over lost money. Families fractured under the weight of blame. The sense of community MMM promised dissolved into suspicion and betrayal. Early winners became targets of envy and anger. The scheme didn't just steal money, it destroyed trust. The collective dream became a collective nightmare. In the end, the only real winners were those who got out early. Everyone else paid the price. By summer 1994, MMM was too big to sustain. It needed endless new cash, but the pool of recruits was drying up. A third of Russia's money was tied up in the scheme. When payouts slowed, panic set in. The government raided MMM's offices, accusing it of massive fraud. The raid triggered a stampede. Everyone rushed to cash out, but MMM wasn't a bank. There was no money left. The system froze, tickets became worthless overnight, and offices shut down. The collapse was swift and brutal. Public adoration turned to outrage. Protests erupted, but there was nothing left to recover. The dream was over, replaced by anger and despair. MMM's fall left a nation in ruins. After the collapse, chaos reigned. The government offered little help, insisting people had invested at their own risk. Mavrodi vanished, then reappeared as a member of parliament, gaining immunity. Eventually arrested and convicted, he served a short sentence. The stolen money was never recovered. Incredibly, Mavrodi tried again, launching new MMM schemes online, targeting countries from India to Nigeria. Millions joined and millions lost again. The pattern repeated: rapid growth, sudden collapse, fresh victims. Mavrodi died in 2018, but his legacy endures. MMM became a global cautionary tale. The real damage was lasting cynicism and lost trust. Why do we keep falling for schemes like MMM? It's not just greed or naivety. People were desperate for hope in uncertain times. Mavrodi sold a dream, a simple solution to complex problems. The tactics he used, relatable stories, community, a common enemy, are still used by scammers today. Technology changes, but human psychology doesn't. The fear of missing out, the lure of easy money, and the promise of belonging are powerful. The real lesson? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Wealth is built slowly, not overnight. Be skeptical, ask questions, and invest in knowledge, not fantasies. The story of MMM is a warning. Easy money is almost always a trap. Stay curious, stay cautious, and don't let hope blind you to reality.